My name is Leo, and for most of my 26 years I have lived my life like the rivers that define my home city of Riverbend, steadily, quietly, and with a clear sense of my own course. The water here has a certain wisdom. It carves its path through stone not with force, but with persistence. I've tried to emulate that. I work as a financial analyst for Viridian Capital, a firm that prides itself on sustainable investment, a philosophy that resonates deep within me. It's not just about accumulating wealth, but about building something lasting and responsible. This discipline has been my bedrock since I was a teenager, allowing me to secure scholarships for college and build a life of quiet independence by the time I was 20. My family, however, operates on a different current, one that is often turbulent and unpredictable. My parents, while loving in their own way, have always navigated the world with a flair for the dramatic and a certain disregard for the fine print of life. And at the center of their world has always been my sister, Clara. Clara is 2 years my junior, a whirlwind of artistic energy and effortless charm who just completed her degree in digital media. Growing up, the disparity in my parents' attention was as plain as the gray, ever-present clouds in a Riverbend winter sky. While I was poring over textbooks to earn my next scholarship, Clara was being gifted the latest art supplies or a new laptop to support her budding genius. While I was learning to cook and manage a household budget out of necessity, her responsibilities were gracefully waived so she wouldn't be burdened. I never resented Clara for it. She simply accepted the world our parents built for her. Instead, I turned inward, finding my own validation in academic success and later, financial stability. That stability became my sanctuary, a quiet harbor I had built for myself, safe from the emotional tides of my family. The illusion of that safety shattered on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where a persistent drizzle mists the windows and the world outside feels muted and soft. I was at my desk, reviewing a portfolio of green energy startups, when my phone buzzed. It was my mother. Her voice, when she spoke, was effervescent, bubbling with an excitement that immediately put me on edge. "Leo, darling! I have the most wonderful news!" she began, no preamble, no "how are you?" "You know how hard Clara has worked, and with her graduation, your father and I felt she deserved something truly spectacular. A reward for all her creativity." I murmured something noncommittal, my focus still half on the spreadsheet in front of me. "That's great, Mom. What did you have in mind?" "We've booked it. A month-long grand continental sojourn for her. Paris, Rome, Vienna, all the places she's dreamed of. 5-star hotels, private tours, the works. It's going to be the experience of a lifetime." A genuine smile touched my lips. "Clara would love that." "Wow, Mom. She'll be thrilled. That's an incredible gift." "Oh, she is," my mother chirped. "And that's where you come in, my darling boy. We used your Venture Premier card to book it all. The points you have are simply divine. We got her first-class upgrades for the whole trip. Don't worry," she added, her tone becoming a breezy afterthought. "We'll pay you back, of course. Eventually." The spreadsheet on my screen blurred. The numbers, once so clear and orderly, swam into an incomprehensible mess. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones, a feeling so stark it stole my breath. "Mom," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What did you just say?" "I said we used your card, dear. For the points. It was the only way to make it truly special." I swiveled in my chair, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled up my credit card app on my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. And there it was. A single, pending charge that made the room spin. It wasn't just a few thousand for flights. It was a staggering, life-altering sum. "Mom," I said, my voice now tight and strained. "The charge on my card is for $48,000. "Yes, about that," she said, her voice still impossibly light. "It's a magnificent trip, isn't it?" The calm, steady river of my life had just met a catastrophic waterfall. "Mom, you can't do that. You can't just use my credit card for a $48,000 purchase without asking me. That's not legal. It's a massive amount of money." A sigh came through the phone, laced with impatience. "Oh, Leo, don't be so dramatic. You've always been so obsessed with your money. Can't you just be happy for your sister for once? This is her moment. You're trying to ruin it with all your penny pinching." I was speechless. The accusation of selfishness, of ruining my sister's moment, was so absurd, so disconnected from the reality of the situation, that I couldn't form a response. I was being chastised for reacting to a violation of trust so profound it felt like a physical blow. The call ended a few moments later, my mother's final words hanging in the air like toxic smoke. "Just be a good brother, Leo. We'll sort it out." I hung up the phone and stared out the window at the rain-streaked glass. The quiet sanctuary I had so carefully constructed had been breached, its walls torn down by the very people I was supposed to be able to trust. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, a white-hot anger at the audacity, a deep, aching hurt at the betrayal, and a dizzying sense of disbelief. Was this really my family? Was this really happening? The steady current I had charted for myself was gone, and I was adrift in a storm. In the days that followed, Riverbend's gentle gloom seemed to seep into my soul. The familiar comfort of a morning fog rolling over the Hawthorne Bridge, or the earthy scent of damp soil in Forest Park did little to soothe the turmoil inside me. I felt unmoored, as if the very ground beneath my feet had become unstable. My financial security, the one thing I had absolute control over, had been compromised, but it was the emotional fallout that truly devastated me. The charge on my card wasn't just a number. It was a symbol of my parents' utter disregard for me as an individual, for my autonomy, for the life I had painstakingly built. Hoping for a voice of reason, I called my father. I'd always seen him as the more grounded of my parents, the quiet anchor to my mother's whimsical sails. I explained the situation to him, carefully, trying to keep the anger and hurt from my voice, focusing on the practical implications. "Dad, this has maxed out my credit limit," I said, pacing the length of my small apartment, the polished concrete floors cool beneath my feet. "This is the card I keep for emergencies. A real emergency. What if my roof started leaking? What if I had a medical issue? This isn't just about the money, it's about the trust." My father listened with a series of placating hums. "I hear you, son," he said, his voice smooth and measured. "But your mother got a little carried away with the planning. She just wants the best for Clara. You know how she is. You're doing so well for yourself, Leo. We're so proud. To you, $48,000, well, it's a lot, I know, but you can handle it. For us, it's a way to give your sister something we never could on our own." His words were meant to be calming, but they felt like gasoline on a fire. He was asking me to absorb this, to accept it as my responsibility, to be the financial backstop for their grand gestures. "Dad, it's not about whether I can handle it," I insisted, my voice rising despite my efforts. "It's about the principle. You took something from me without asking. Don't look at it as taking," he said gently. "Look at it as contributing. You're part of this family, and we all help each other out. Don't make this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. You're overreacting." Overreacting. The word echoed my mother's accusation of being dramatic. It felt like I was living in a different reality, one where the rules of respect and consent didn't apply. The conversation ended with no resolution, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever. My last hope was Clara. Perhaps she was unaware of the specifics, caught up in the excitement of the gift. I found her at a trendy cafe downtown, a place with exposed brick walls and the rich aroma of freshly roasted coffee. She was glowing, her sketchbook open on the table, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Leo!" she exclaimed, jumping up to hug me. "I was just about to call you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't believe it. A month in Europe. Mom told me you helped make it happen with your amazing credit card points. You're the best big brother ever." She looked at me with such genuine, unadulterated happiness that my resolve wavered. Her gratitude was for a gift she believed I had willingly given. How could I shatter that? But looking at her radiant face, I knew I had to. The foundation of her joy was a lie, and I couldn't let it stand. "Clara," I began gently. We need to talk about the trip. It's a little more complicated than Mom explained. I tried to lay out the facts as calmly as possible, but as the reality of the situation dawned on her, her expression shifted from joy to confusion, and then to a defensive frown that I knew all too well. It was the same expression she wore as a child when I'd point out she hadn't done her chores. So you're saying you're mad about it? She asked, her voice small. You want to take it back? I'm not mad at you, I clarified, though a part of me was frustrated by her naivete. I'm upset that Mom and Dad did this without my permission. Clara, they spent $48,000 in my name. I can't afford to just give that away. Her eyes welled with tears. But they said they'd pay you back. You always make everything about money, Leo. It's like you can't stand to see me have something nice. You've always been a little jealous, haven't you? The accusation, coming from her, hurt more than it had from our mother. Jealousy? I had spent my entire life cheering her on from the sidelines, swallowing my own needs to ensure she had what she wanted. I had been proud of her, genuinely. But in that moment, all she could see was a stingy, resentful brother trying to ruin her happiness. The family narrative was so powerful that it warped her perception of reality. I was the responsible, boring, money-obsessed son, she was the free-spirited artist. Our roles were set in stone. Feeling utterly defeated, I left the cafe and walked toward the river. The water was a murky green, swollen with the recent rains. I felt a kinship with it, a calm surface hiding a turbulent, powerful current underneath. Driven by a desperate need for a lifeline, I called my credit card company again. I explained the situation, this time escalating to a fraud specialist. I clarified that while my parents had the card details for a true emergency, a hospital visit, a car breakdown, I had never, ever authorized a purchase of this nature or scale. The specialist was sympathetic but firm. Mr. Vance, she said, her voice professionally polite, I understand your frustration. However, since you willingly provided your card information to your parents, it's considered a domestic dispute, not fraudulent activity from our perspective. The charge is legitimate. You are responsible for the balance. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was trapped. I was $48,000 in debt, my credit was maxed out, and my family, the perpetrators of this financial and emotional theft, saw me as the villain of the story. I stood on the riverbank, the drizzle turning into a steady downpour, feeling the full weight of my predicament. I could cancel the trip myself, which would ignite a family war of epic proportions, scarring our relationships permanently. Or I could swallow the bitter pill, pay off the debt over years, and let this monumental breach of trust become a precedent for future abuse. Am I overreacting? The question looped in my mind, a toxic echo of my parents' voices. But as I watched a lone freighter push its way upriver against the strong current, I knew the answer. No. My feelings were valid. This wasn't about money, it was about respect. And in that moment I realized that if I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would. A quiet resolve began to form within me, as persistent and unyielding as the river in front of me. I had to find a way to reclaim my course. The validation from strangers on an online forum, where I had shared my story in a moment of desperation, was like a beacon in a thick fog. Their collective outrage and support affirmed what I had begun to suspect. My feelings were not an overreaction. They were a sane response to an insane situation. Bolstered by this newfound clarity, I decided to take decisive action. My first step was another call to the credit card company. This time, I was no longer a frantic victim but a determined advocate for myself. I asked to speak to a senior manager in the fraud department. I calmly and methodically detailed the timeline of events, emphasizing the distinction between providing access for a life-or-death emergency and the unauthorized use for a luxury vacation. I used specific phrases: unauthorized transaction, breach of familial trust, and financial abuse. I was firm, clear, and relentless. After a long, tense conversation, the manager finally relented. They agreed to open a formal investigation into the charge as potential fraud, freezing the payment in the interim. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Next, I scheduled a family meeting via video call. I needed to face them all at once, to present a united front of one, myself. The screen lit up with their faces, my mother, looking expectant, my father, his expression carefully neutral, and Clara, who appeared sullen and avoided looking directly at the camera. I took a deep breath, the air in my apartment feeling charged and heavy. I've called this meeting because we need to address the situation with the European trip. I began, my voice even. What you did was not just a simple misunderstanding. It was a severe breach of trust and has put me in a very difficult financial position. The amount charged to my card is $48,000. I paused, letting the number hang in the virtual space between us. My mother was the first to speak, her tone indignant. Leo, we've been over this. It's for your sister. We raised you, we provided for you your entire life. Is it so much to ask that you help your family? You chose to be parents. I responded, my voice remaining calm, though my heart was pounding. Providing for your children is a responsibility, not a loan that you get to call in by committing credit card fraud in my name. Those are two separate things. From the corner of my screen, I saw Clara flinch. She had been silent until now, a storm brewing behind her eyes. Suddenly it broke. You're ruining this, she cried, tears streaming down her face. This was the one beautiful, amazing thing that was happening for me, and you're destroying it because you can't stand to see me happy. You've always been jealous of me, ever since we were kids. Her words were a familiar dagger, but this time, something had shifted in me. The pain was still there, but it was now shielded by a new layer of self-respect. Clara, I am genuinely happy for you, and I'm incredibly proud of your graduation, I said, my voice softening with sincerity. But this trip wasn't a gift from me. It was charged to my account without my knowledge or consent. That is the issue here. This isn't about you or my feelings for you. It's about my parents' actions. My father, ever the mediator, tried to smooth things over. Son, we had access to the card for emergencies. We just thought it would be okay this one time. We didn't think you'd make such a fuss. Dad, this was not an emergency, I stated, my patience wearing thin. And $48,000 is not just this once. It's a decision that impacts my entire financial future, my ability to buy a home, to save for my own goals. You don't get to make those decisions for me. I delivered my final point with unwavering resolve. I have reported the charge to the credit card company as fraudulent. Their investigation is underway. I need you to call the travel agency and cancel the trip immediately. That is the only way to begin to fix this. The reactions were a symphony of disbelief and anger. My mother accused me of tearing the family apart over money. My father sighed with disappointment, as if I were a lost cause. Clara simply wept. The call ended with nothing resolved, their promises of repayment, soon, feeling as empty and hollow as their understanding of my perspective. The next day, I took a step I never imagined I would. I walked into the central precinct of the Riverbend Police Department. The air inside smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. I sat across from an officer with kind, tired eyes and recounted the entire story. He listened patiently, taking detailed notes. You have every right to file this report, he said when I finished. What they did is, by definition, fraud. I have to be honest with you, though. Pressing charges against your own parents, that's a bell you can't unring. It will likely cause a permanent fracture in your family. His words weighed on me, but he also affirmed my right to protect myself. I filed the report, not with a sense of vengeance, but with a heavy feeling of necessity. It was a formal declaration that I would no longer be the silent, accommodating son. I was drawing a line in the sand, not with anger, but with the quiet finality of self-preservation. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus, a digital fortress against any further incursions. This ordeal had stripped away the comfortable illusions I held about my family. It was painful, like setting a broken bone. But in the process, I was beginning to feel something new taking root inside me, a sense of empowerment. I had spent my life as a peacekeeper, absorbing the emotional costs to maintain a fragile harmony. Now, I was learning to advocate for myself, to state my needs, and to declare that my trust, once broken, was not something to be trifled with. It was a difficult and lonely path, but for the first time, it felt like it was truly my own. A few weeks later, a sliver of blue sky broke through Riverbend's persistent gray clouds, and with it came the first piece of truly good news. I received a letter from the credit card company. The investigation was complete. They had ruled in my favor. The $48,000 charge was officially reversed. A wave of relief so profound washed over me that my knees felt weak. The financial weight, the immediate, crushing burden, was gone. The relief, however, was short-lived. The chargeback triggered the cancellation of the Grand Continental sojourn. The subsequent explosion was even more catastrophic than I had anticipated. My phone became a vessel for my family's rage. My mother left a string of voicemails, her voice escalating from tearful disappointment to venomous fury, calling me a selfish, ungrateful son who had deliberately and maliciously sabotaged his sister's dream. Clara's response was more public. She posted a tear-streaked video to her social media, a carefully framed monologue about her cruel brother and his obsession with money that had shattered the most meaningful gift of her life. The video went viral within our extended social circle. My phone buzzed with notifications from cousins, old high school friends, and family acquaintances, all wanting to know why I was being so harsh on my little sister. The court of public opinion was swayed by Clara's tears, and I was swiftly convicted. The pressure was immense. It was one thing to stand up to my parents and sister in private, another entirely to be publicly vilified. I knew I had to respond, not to engage in the drama, but to set the record straight. I wrote a single, calm post on my own social media page. I stated the facts simply: that a significant sum had been charged to my card without my permission, that I had attempted to resolve the issue privately with my family first, and that their refusal to act had forced my hand. I ended by saying I loved my sister and wished her the best, but that I had a right to protect my own financial well-being. The response was a schism. Some friends and family members expressed shock at my parents' actions and offered their support. But a startling number of people sided with my family, their comments echoing a sentiment I found deeply disturbing: that family should be exempt from rules, that I should have just absorbed the cost for the sake of harmony. In the midst of this digital firestorm, an unexpected call came from my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but her voice was a balm of calm reason. "Leo, I heard about what's going on," she said gently. "I just want you to know, you did the right thing. Don't let them make you doubt that." She then shared a piece of family history I'd never known. My mother, she explained, had a long-standing pattern of financial irresponsibility. She had borrowed money from relatives and never paid it back, co-signed for loans that went into default, and always managed to frame herself as the victim when consequences arose. My grandparents had enabled it for years, always bailing her out. I was not the first person she had taken advantage of. I was just the latest in a long line. "Your mother has a talent for making other people pay for her dreams," Carol said, a note of sadness in her voice. "I'm so sorry you're the one dealing with it now. Stay strong." Her words were a revelation. This wasn't an isolated incident born of overzealous graduation planning. It was a deep-seated, generational pattern of behavior. And I had unknowingly been cast in the role of the enabler-in-chief. That conversation solidified my resolve. I knew what I had to do, as painful as it was. I wrote a single, carefully worded email to my parents and a separate one to Clara. I explained that for the sake of my own mental health, I needed to go no contact for the foreseeable future. I told them I needed time and space to process the betrayal and that I could not have a relationship with them until I felt they could respect my boundaries. Their reactions were predictably explosive. My parents accused me of being dramatic and tearing the family apart. Clara responded with a one-line email: "I can't believe you're doing this to me." It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. But as I clicked send, I also felt a profound sense of release. I was finally stepping out of the cycle. In the quiet that followed, I focused on rebuilding my fortress, this time with stronger walls. I closed the compromised credit card account, opened new accounts at a different bank, and changed every password I had. I also took the most important step of all. I found a therapist. In our first session, as I recounted the story, I felt the tight knot of guilt and doubt inside me begin to loosen. There have been unexpected silver linings. My relationship with Aunt Carol and a few of my cousins who reached out in support has deepened. They have become my real family, a chosen circle of support built on mutual respect. I heard through my aunt that my parents, in an attempt to save face, are planning a smaller trip for Clara to California. A part of me, the old, peacekeeping Leo, felt a pang of guilt. But I gently pushed it away, reminding myself that her graduation gift was their responsibility, not mine. This experience has been a crucible, burning away my naivete and forcing me to confront uncomfortable truths. But from the ashes, something stronger is emerging. I am learning that self-respect is not selfish, and that setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, but an act of love for myself. The path forward is uncertain, and I know there are moments of loneliness and doubt ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I am the one steering my own ship, and the open sea, while daunting, is also full of promise. A month of no contact stretched into 2, then 3. The silence from my family was a strange, hollow space in my life. At first, it felt like a missing limb, an ache where something familiar used to be. But slowly, as the weeks passed, the silence began to feel less like an absence and more like a presence, the presence of peace. The constant, low-level anxiety that had been my lifelong companion began to dissipate. My apartment, once just a place to sleep, began to feel like a true home, a sanctuary I had successfully defended. My therapy sessions became my anchor. With my therapist, a kind and insightful woman named Dr. Alastair, I began to unpack the intricate dynamics of my family system. I saw how my role as the responsible one was not a virtue but a function, a necessary cog in a machine that allowed others to abdicate their own responsibilities. It was a painful but liberating realization. After much consideration, I followed my lawyer's advice and sent a formal cease and desist letter to my parents. It felt clinical and severe, but it was a necessary formality, a legally binding expression of the boundary I had already set emotionally. It warned them that any future attempts to access my finances or credit would result in immediate legal action. It was a final, definitive closing of a door I had left cracked open for far too long. Then, one rainy afternoon, an email from Clara appeared in my inbox. The subject line simply read, "Thinking." I braced myself for another round of accusations, but the tone of the message was completely different. It was quiet, reflective, and startlingly mature. "Leo," she wrote, "I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything happened. At first, I was just so angry and hurt about the trip. But the more space I've had, the more I realize how wrong it was. Not just the trip, but everything. I see now that what Mom and Dad did was completely out of line, and I'm so sorry that I attacked you instead of supporting you. I was so used to being the center of their world that I couldn't see how much it was costing you. The truth is, I was scared. It was easier to be mad at you than to be mad at them." She went on to share some of her own frustrations with our parents, small financial manipulations and emotional pressures she had never mentioned before. It seemed the cancelled trip had been a wake-up call for her, too, forcing her to see the strings attached to their generosity. I read the email 3 times, cautiously optimistic. Her apology felt genuine, born of reflection rather than a desire to placate me. I waited a week before responding, and then suggested a phone call. Our first conversation was tentative, like two people learning to speak a new language. But for the first time, I felt like I was talking to my sister as an equal, not as a caretaker or a rival. We began to talk regularly, slowly, carefully rebuilding a bridge between us. My parents, however, remained unwilling to cross that bridge. They attempted to circumvent my no-contact rule through various means. There were guilt-laced emails, voicemails from my father sounding wounded and confused, And then, one evening, a frantic pounding on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole to see my mother, her face tear-streaked and desperate. "Leo! Please open the door! We need to talk!" she cried, her voice echoing in the hallway. My heart hammered in my chest. Every instinct I had been conditioned with screamed at me to open the door, to comfort her, to fix it. But Dr. Alastair's voice echoed in my head. "You are not responsible for their feelings." I stood there, my hand on the doorknob, my whole body trembling. I took a deep breath, and I did not open the door. I waited until her pleas subsided and her footsteps retreated. It was the hardest and most powerful thing I had ever done. My extended family remained divided. My Aunt Carol continued to be a rock, a source of unwavering support. But other relatives periodically sent messages urging me to reconcile. "They're your parents," one uncle wrote. "You only get one set." I began to distance myself from them as well, realizing that my peace of mind was more valuable than maintaining relationships that demanded I sacrifice my well-being. Freed from the weight of my family's drama, my own life began to blossom. My focus at work sharpened, and my efforts were noticed. Last week, I was offered a promotion to senior analyst, a position that came with a significant pay raise and more responsibility. In the past, news like this would have been immediately followed by a sense of obligation. How could I use this to help my parents or Clara? This time, I celebrated quietly with a few close friends who had stood by me. The achievement was mine alone, and the feeling was pure and unadulterated pride. I've also started dating again. I met a woman named Sarah, a landscape architect whose calm, earthly presence feels like coming home. When I told her, cautiously, about my family's situation, she didn't flinch. She simply listened and said, "It sounds like you've done something incredibly brave." Looking ahead, I feel a sense of cautious optimism. The no-contact period with my parents will continue indefinitely. Healing is not a linear process, and I know I need more time. With Clara, I am open to nurturing this new, more honest relationship. This journey has taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about respect, support, and the people who show up for you when you need them most. It's my Aunt Carol checking in with a text. It's my friends raising a glass to my promotion. It's Sarah holding my hand, her touch a silent promise of understanding. I'm learning to trust my own judgment, to invest in my own future without guilt. The river of my life is finding its course again, not by returning to the old, familiar channel, but by carving a new one, deeper, stronger, and entirely my own. The last year has been one of profound and unexpected transformation. The seeds of change, planted in the rocky soil of crisis, have grown into something I never could have anticipated. The most significant development is that I am writing this from a small, sunlit apartment in a new city, 5 hours north of Riverbend. The air here smells of salt and sea, a crisp departure from the damp earth I've known my whole life. I have been accepted into a 1-year master's program in financial technology, a dream I had long deferred, believing it was an indulgence I couldn't afford, not financially, but emotionally. The decision to leave my job, uproot my life, and invest so heavily in myself felt like the ultimate declaration of independence. This new chapter was preceded by a cautious attempt at reconciliation with my family. 3 months before I moved, after nearly a year of no contact, my parents, Clara, and I agreed to a family therapy session. Walking into that neutral office felt like entering a demilitarized zone. The air was thick with unspoken resentments. Initially, my parents were defensive, repeating the old refrains about their intentions being good. But our therapist skillfully guided the conversation away from the singular event of the trip and toward the underlying patterns. The breakthrough came when, under gentle but persistent questioning, my father finally confessed something he had hidden from everyone. He had lost a substantial portion of their retirement savings in a high-risk investment months before Clara's graduation. The revelation hung in the room, heavy and suffocating. He had been trying to keep up appearances, to project an image of prosperity he could no longer sustain. The lavish trip for Clara was a desperate, misguided attempt to maintain that facade, and my credit card was the tool of convenience. My mother, who had been his staunchest defender, looked at him with a sense of betrayal I recognized all too well. For the first time, they were not a united front against me. They were two people facing the consequences of their own choices. In that moment, something shifted. It didn't excuse what they did, but it humanized them. I saw not malicious villains, but flawed, frightened people who had made a terrible mistake out of shame and desperation. At the end of that session, for the first time, I received a genuine apology from both of them. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't erase the hurt, but it was a start. We've continued with monthly sessions, and while the path to rebuilding trust is long and uncertain, it is no longer entirely blocked. My relationship with Clara has continued to flourish. She has a full-time job at a small marketing firm and just moved into her own apartment. She calls me for advice on budgeting and setting up a retirement account. Our conversations are no longer about the past, but about the future, hers and mine. I'm not just her big brother anymore, I'm her friend. And then there is Sarah. Our long-distance relationship has been a testament to the strength of our connection. Her unwavering support for my decision to pursue my degree has been a constant source of strength. Her own well-defined family boundaries have made her a wise and empathetic partner on this journey. We talk every night, sharing the small details of our separate days, building a shared life across the miles. As I settle into my new life, I often reflect on the man I was when I received that fateful phone call. He was so afraid of conflict, so conditioned to keep the peace at his own expense. The pain of that betrayal was immense, but it was also a gift. It forced me to find a voice I never knew I had and a strength I never knew I possessed. It taught me that setting boundaries is the highest form of self-respect, and that true family, whether by blood or by choice, is defined by its ability to honor those boundaries. To all those who have followed this story, who offered a kind word or a piece of advice in my darkest moments, thank you. Your support was a lifeline. If you are facing your own battles with family, know that you have a right to your own peace, your own future, and your own happiness. It is possible to emerge from the fire not scorched, but forged. I'm not sure what the future holds for my family. Perhaps we will find a new, healthier way to be connected. Perhaps we won't. But for the first time, I am certain that I will be okay, regardless. As I look out my window at the unfamiliar coastline, I feel a sense of profound calm. I am the captain of my own ship, sailing on a sea of my own choosing, and for the first time in my life, I am excited to see where the tide takes me.